What you're looking at is the epitome of Audi's sedan lineup. The S8 is an uber powerful, ultra-luxe status machine, and it's equal parts riot and relaxing. So thanks to our friends at Audi Milwaukee for letting us have a go. I've always had a bit of a soft spot in my heart for big, executive luxury sedans. They're like the most distinguished way to travel, especially when they've got Porsche derived 4-liter twin-turbo V8s under the hood. Since there is no RS8, this S8 is at the top of the range, and it spits out a snarling 563 horsepower and 590 pound-feet. Which, if you don't count the soon-to-be phased-out V12 7 Series, is the most powerful in the segment, at least until AMG gets their hands on the new S-Class. Most power in the segment, best-in-class power, they're really just marketing words, and they don't really have any sort of meaning in the real world. But what you want to know is, how does it feel behind the wheel in this S8? So we'll chuck it up into dynamic mode, exhaust on powerful, and we'll pin it. This thing has no business being as quick as it is. This is a 5,100 pound luxury limo, and it sprints to 60 in like 3.8 seconds, and it makes the best noises while it does it. Power is only one ingredient of the 0 to 60 recipe. This S8 also gets the 8-speed and of course the legendary Quattro all-wheel drive system with their Sport LSD in the back. All that makes this thing rocket to 60 way faster than I was anticipating on these Goodyear summer tires. So it's fast, it's powerful, and it makes great noises. Then, usually this is the part of the video where I say, but how does it go around turns? And the answer is, shockingly well, especially for a 5,100 pound luxury barge. This is made possible largely by two things. All S8s come standard with dynamic air suspension, and this guy also has all-wheel steering. So what's happening in a corner is very important, because what we have here is a rear steer module, and what that allows the car to do is at under a certain speed, the rear wheels will turn opposite of the front wheels, thus decreasing your turning circle, and that gives it a really darty, really sharp, and kind of a light feeling front end, especially light considering this is an Audi. And then at higher speeds, over a certain mile an hour, the rear wheels will turn in the same direction as the front wheels to increase your stability at a higher speed. And then that's where the suspension starts to step in. And then that's when the air suspension starts to come into play. All S8s come standard with air suspension, and that reads your wheel speed sensors and your steering inputs, and that'll adjust the suspension. So if you're in a hard left-hander, it'll raise the right-hand side of the car to keep you level, to keep the chassis neutral. It's incredible. And from there, of course, the car's also reading the road and adjusting the damping ratio accordingly to whatever the road condition's gonna be. Right now we're on really smooth, so you can have a little bit tighter damper. But then if we come up to a crack or a big bump in the road, the car's gonna read that and soften things up as we go over it. And then as we go past the bump, it'll firm itself back up. So you really don't get much of any body roll, and you don't get any huge thuds or wobbles either. This is a really nice ride. It also doesn't hurt that the brakes are 6-piston sports up front, so dynamically it's way sharper than I was expecting. It's still an Audi, and there's a slight heaviness on the front end, but the sharpness of the steering and the rear steer module really do away with a lot of understeer. But there's an important piece of the powertrain I haven't mentioned yet. And to talk about that, we'll dial it back down into Comfort Plus, because as I've been saying this whole video, this is, after all, a luxury limousine type thing. And while it does say S8 on the front and the back, which signifies the sporty designation, the true essence of the A8 or S8 or Audi 8 nameplate is supremely comfortable. And this truly is. Dialed back into comfort mode, the suspension really softens back. It's reading the road in front of me like I mentioned with the sport thing, but it's doing so with a little bit different mission in mind. It's to keep things smooth and not give you a big jostle or big bump, something that would wake you up if you're sleeping in the back seat. I love the way that this thing rides because it does just waft. And I know that some people don't prefer that, but to me, that speaks to the exquisite luxury and the fact that this thing can drive as dynamic and sporty as it does while also doing the wafting thing. in your Comfort Plus, this is incredible. And then from there, things like your steering lighten up to the point where it's just effortless. And of course, there's no sound coming into this cabin at all, so it's just so refined. It gives you such a feeling of elegance and isolation. And most importantly, what we haven't talked about is the 48-volt mild hybrid system that you get on this thing. And that does a fantastic job at smoothing out every single motion that this thing makes. Pulling away from a stop, incredibly smooth. Gear changes, I didn't even notice. Everything in here is smooth and sophisticated and to another level. Dialed back into a more relaxed drive mode, this S8 reminds you that this is one of the most refined and distinguished ways to traverse the world. So let's step outside and talk about some of the finer details. This is the part of the video where I walk around the car and talk about the design elements. But I left my jorts in the dryer too long and they shrunk and it messed with the mic, so I'm sorry. But what we have here from the S8 is a really simple sedan profile. It's got very simple body lines, and that's because Audi spends a lot of time and focus on their lighting and grille. Up front you have their digital matrix headlights, and these headlights can project images onto the road itself for augmented reality navigation. Plus you have Audi's big black grille, and it has a nice lattice pattern to it. The spec here is black on black with the black optics, so everything, aside from the brake calipers, the S on the grille, and the S on the back, is black. The hood itself is a mile long, and you have a super simple profile as well. 21-inch black gloss wheels are wrapped in Goodyear summer tires for extra grip. You also have 6-piston brakes peeking out from behind the front wheels. All Audi S8s come with air suspension as standard, and it'll tilt the car into a corner so that the chassis feels flat to you. And then, when you open the door, the car will raise itself up to make it easier to get in and out. The rear end design, it's incredibly simple, surprise, but with taillights like these, it's almost better that way. They're gorgeous, and they actually change design depending on your drive mode. Interestingly enough, even with the black on black with black optics spec, we still have chrome quad tips. But let's step inside. But from there we have a beautifully modern cabin. Now to me, the way that this one's spec'd, there's a lot of gloss black, and I have my feelings about that, but you can get other finishes and textures in here if you so choose. You do have a lot of diversity of materials, which helps break up some of the black and the modern aspect of it. So you get carbon fiber some places, you get Alcantara, you get aluminum, you get fantastic leather. This is kind of like a lighter saddle brown, but it's very nice interior. It's got Alcantara where you wouldn't even think on the inside of your seat, not the inside where you sit, but kind of the inner side of the seats where no one's going to sit there, but it's just nice to have that texture. You've got contrast stitching, and you've got all sorts of stuff to kind of really bring up that sense of quality and prestige in here. The interior is much more subdued from a design perspective than something like the Mercedes or the new 7 Series, and I kind of like that. It's familiar, it's very Audi, and it feels pretty good. You do get heated seats, you get cooled seats, you get a heated steering wheel, of course, and one of the coolest things is that the vents in your dashboard, when the car is off, they will completely close away. And then when you turn the car on, then the vents will reveal themselves, almost like a Bentley. So again, very cool, very prestigious. From there, some of the tech features, of course, you've got a head-up display, you've got a completely digital instrument cluster. Audi's virtual cockpit, they were kind of the pioneers to do that. Their integration with Google Earth is just, it's splendid, it's fantastic. The graphics are great, the contrast, the colors, it's fantastic. You do get a 10-inch infotainment system with your familiar MMI from Audi. You get wireless CarPlay, Android Auto, and then below that you kind of get an 8-inch climate screen, which is where you can control your heated seat, your cooled seat, your climates, all that sort of stuff is down there in a separate screen. So that's kind of nice as well. You do get a wireless charger in your center console here, and you can open up each one of these little bins individually. So if you don't want to have the whole thing open for whatever reason, you don't have to. And then in terms of the back seat, it's huge, and you get a huge door opening, so it is incredibly easy to get in and out of that thing, very relaxing. Of course, you've got automatic window shades to shield you from the sun, and then you've got heated rear seats, of course, and you've got quad zone climate controls. So the left rear passenger and the right rear passenger can enjoy different temperatures, which would be nice for me and my wife because she's always 10 degrees colder than I am. And then when we get to the trunk, it's not the biggest trunk that I've ever seen, but it is very deep, and the opening is huge, and it's super easy to use, and it is still a big trunk. So comprehensively, this is a really nice, subdued, very luxurious, very focused on being true to itself cabin, and I think that's probably a good time to get into the final thoughts. So that's the 2022 Audi S8. I'll be honest, this was my first true experience with the S8. I've tested the A8 previously and was left feeling that it lacked a little bit of muscle, so I wasn't sure what to expect from this S8. However, after my time with it, I was blown away by the theater and sophistication of this S8. And I know $140,000 doesn't sound like it, but considering the company it's keeping, it's actually kind of a bargain and a huge bang for your buck. So thanks again to our friends at Audi Milwaukee for letting us have a go. We'll see you in the next one.